Hello and welcome to another session of writing as part of this advanced course in English. Today we are going to talk about writing essays or writing generally to influence people. I am not suggesting that you should write in a manner where you seek to influence others even when you express your opinions, ideas, your knowledge upon a particular subject. But quite often it so happens that when we write an essay, particularly when we write on a controversial subject, perhaps we seek to influence people. Okay? Is it ethically correct to influence others? Is it unethical? Is it all right? Actually, it's a very highly delicate ethical question that I might not be able to answer very satisfactorily. But a lot of us believe in what we write and we want others to believe in what we write or what we say. In that sense, it is not unethical. In that sense, it is all right for us to seek to influence others' opinion. Okay? The question here in this session today is not whether we should write to influence others or we should stay neutral. The question here is what kind of language do those use who seek to influence others, who write for others and who want others to think, decide and believe as they do. Okay? So, today in this session we will look at the language of essays, documents, maybe an overview of languages, maybe not a full view of the issues involved, but let us look at language of writing for influencing others. Okay? Next. What is influencing others? When everyone believes that you are right, when everyone does what you do, when everyone wants to do what you do, even when they cannot, that is when you have influenced people. Look at these birds flying in a formation, Okay? Maybe all the white birds are influenced by the one in black. Okay? Next. How do these people, what kinds of words do these people have? Say for instance, they very frequently use words that I have been telling you about, words indicating and questioning quantity. Finally, how many? Okay? Or recent weeks, how recent? Yesterday, last week or later? Or minimum numbers. Okay? This indicates a small number, but how small? Several, higher than the minimum perhaps. A strong preference, what do you mean? Can we quantify strong? Does it go well with preference? Okay? Then continuing to rise, where was it and how much it rose to? So, without giving these specific particulars, when you read a document which seeks to influence you, you will come across expressions of this kind in those documents when they should write differently. Look at the next. Say for example, this is the language of one or two survey reports where we have seen how people seek to influence. In an auto survey last week, 78.1% of the total 350 respondents showed preference towards personal car or two-wheelers in any particular city. the number of people who own cars today, even in India, is about 40%. Okay? So, if you are in a city like Hyderabad where 40% people own cars, then the number of car owners there could easily be about 24-25 lakh people, okay, or even more. In Delhi it may be much higher, in Bombay and Calcutta, and it may be still higher, okay. But when that is not the case, when you have only very few respondents and you want to say, you want to influence opinions, then maybe you mention those absolute numbers, in this case 350, but you try to influence them by citing percentages, Maybe you mention the number once, or you don't do even that, and when you say 8.7%, okay, or 78%. 78% otherwise sounds great, but 78% of 350 might not be more than 250, okay, or 8.7% might not be more than 24-25 people, 7 might be under 25 people. So, rather than say small fractions or small numbers, many people, particularly advertising agencies, particularly those who are in propaganda, rhetoric, politics, those who are in the business of influencing mass opinion, use expressions of this kind, where absolute number might or might not be there once, but otherwise percentages, otherwise numbers, words that would influence people are used very frequently. Okay? What do you mean by the remaining voted for autos? 7.2%, 8.7%. So, added to 78% would come to about 93, So, how much remains? But if you otherwise say the remaining voted for auto rickshaws, auto vehicles, then it looks like somewhere for public transport, but the remaining people, which may be in hundreds of thousands, supported use of private transport. That may not be the case, okay? But these are the ways, these are the tools of language that people use to influence others into thinking as these people think themselves. Okay? Whether you should do so, whether you need not do so, is a very tricky question. It's absolutely philosophy in its most critical form, ethics. Okay? That's for you to decide. As far as I am concerned, I draw your attention to the language of documents, language of speeches used in influencing others. Look at another survey included over 400 middle and high income groups. In earlier survey, you did not say 350 respondents of what kind, but because you had a larger percentage there in support of what you want, so you said 78% of the total preferred personal cars. But here perhaps that is not the case, so you have just tried to fill in the vacuum to influence others by looking at the constitution of your sample of respondents. Earlier you did not look at the sample of respondents in the social profile of the sample of your respondents, but here you do. What are you trying to say? That some of your respondents come from middle and high income groups in a city like Delhi, okay, and in surrounding areas, national capital region such as Ghaziabad, Faridabad, Noida, Gurgaon, and that sort of thing. Okay. So, these things become the tools of propaganda, tools of influencing people, you soon forget that only 400 people were interviewed or 400 people were surveyed. What you remember is so many cities, Delhi, Ghaziabad, Faridabad, Noida, Mathura, Rohtak, neighboring cities in the national capital region. Okay? And then you come to conclusions like the analysis showed that preference for car ownership and usage will increase in the short run. Look at the words, a number of tentative words. The analysis showed that preference. It doesn't say that those who the respondents chose or bought. He said the respondents might like to have. Okay, very tentative. For car ownership and uses. Okay, what are you trying to say? If you own a car, you are also going to use it. Okay, but perhaps you have a car and you never use it. Okay, so here is a case where you have car and you use it. Then it says it will increase in the short run. What do you mean by short run? How long? 3 months, 2 months, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. Okay, so critical use of vague words as keywords also influences our opinion. I am not saying India is the worst country in the world, but every time we say we are the best, we are seeking to influence others rather than letting them reach their own conclusions. Next. Same thing is being done by this graph or chart in a little less. Here also absolute numbers are not given. To that extent, it's guilty of propaganda or guilty of seeking to influence others. Otherwise, it's okay, But remarkably, you can see numbers are not given. 78 of how many? 8.7% of how many? 6% of how many? And 7.2% of how many use or will use these methods of transport. Next. Okay. Another survey cited that 62% respondents. 62 of how many? Should you not first say that another survey had about 300 or 3000 respondents with whom we checked what the fact was? Okay. So, if you ask yourself these questions, if you keep that antenna, that filter in your mind, then every time you come across a propagandist writing, you will understand the propaganda part of it in no time. Okay, it's so easy. Right, look at some examples here. Another survey stated that 62%, why not number, had said. Okay, so later perhaps somewhere it says the survey had a sample size of 3000 respondents and it covered categories, it covered, it had more elaborate questions. It had questions like how often do you go shopping, then how do you buy, generally do you do window shopping before deciding, or you make up your mind even before you leave and you look at things out and you buy. Travel, social activities, investments, social responsibilities, etc. have also been checked in this survey. So, what is this survey trying to tell you? That we are more objective than the earlier ones. Earlier ones did not give you number or did not give you percentages, it gives you both. Okay? Then earlier numbers did not explain other parameters, it explains other parameters. So, naturally this survey is better than the other, but look at the reasons behind people stating it. The reason is they are seeking to influence the reader. Next, words like 78% people preferred or 30% people preferred. 30% of how many? If it is 30% of the global population, then you have great business, go ahead. But if you have 30% of the population of Maldives, then please work on the image of your brand. Okay. Similarly with other numbers, please check, and then you have expressions like yet 73% respondents have preferred if it meets high standards, high quality standards. What do you mean by high quality standards? So this is how, using vague words, giving impression of presenting big things when you are actually presenting small things, or giving impression that you are presenting small things when you are presenting big things, convinces you that this piece of writing is a propaganda piece of writing seeking to influence, and no problem, I can also write in this same manner. Okay, do some analysis, do some work. As I said, as I have been saying, language is the best learnt by doing rather than by only listening or watching. So, we are going to give you a report. Okay. Now, analyze the following report carefully and make a list of words and expressions like we did that seek to influence the reader's opinion. Just highlight them. Okay. Or, why or? I'll say and you can also find time to write an essay on the following topic. Namely, should there be a censor certification for films? And there are opinions, both sides, for and against. But what are these opinions? In your essay, you can include those points. And then what do you prefer as an individual, as a citizen? Okay, that is also important. Why? If you can cite some reasons, that will be marvelous. So, in about 200 words, write an essay on this topic. Here is, identify. Next, the point is, language is at the heart of all enterprise that mankind have done. But do you know why you are using language? What is it you want to achieve? Okay. Do you know how to use that language? So these two things have been the focus of this lesson today. That do we use language to seek to influence others? And how do we use this language? If you do so deliberately, no problem. But if you do so involuntarily, without realizing, you influence others rather than present all facts before them and let them think themselves, you have been guilty of that. So maybe, this lesson will help you overcome some of those biases. Thank you very much. Have a good day.